Okay, Kate, I think we are live.
Great.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the closing keynote of the entire conference. Thank you so much for tuning in with us for 3 days. Ascension 2021 would not have been possible without you. And of course, we hope that you had formed some meaningful connections here that will help you build your future in space. So for now, I'd really love to introduce our closing keynote, Kate Howells. So a little bit about Kate. She's a science communicator and space policy advisor and a nonprofit management consultant based in Guelph, Ontario. So Kate's day job is with this Planetary Society, a US-based nonprofit that works with the public to advance space science and exploration. So for those of you who don't know what the Planetary Society is, the Planetary Society was founded in 1980 by Carl Sagan, Louis Friedman, and Bruce Murray. And also today, it's under the leadership of the CEO named, you might know, Bill Nye. Kate also is the author of a book called Space as Cool as Beep. And I'll just let you figure out what Beep is. And she also serves on the board of directors of Royal City Science in Guelph. So without further ado, I'll leave it to Kate, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Shamira, for that introduction. I'm honored to be here with you all as your closing keynote speaker. I've been to a few SEDS Ascension conferences, and it's always a good time. So I hope you guys really enjoyed these 3 days of programming. And I'm sure you're all exhausted by now, so I'm not going to do anything too technical or too heavy, but basically wanted to talk to you a little bit about things that you can do to help advance the exploration and development of space, whether you wind up in a career in the space sector or not. Because I'm going to guess that most of you are hoping to wind up working in the space sector as scientists or engineers or something like that. But I also know that a lot of people don't wind up pursuing that path. And so I want to kind of speak to all of you, regardless of what you study, what your career plans are, or what you wind up doing, 5-10 years from now. So yeah, Shamira gave me a great introduction and introduced the Planetary Society very well as well. But I'll just give a little bit more about the Planetary Society so you have a bit of an understanding of where I'm coming from. So we're an organization based in the United States and founded there in 1980. And the main purpose of the Planetary Society is to increase public understanding and interest in space and channel that into political support for space programs. So we mostly do this with NASA, where we rally our members in the States to communicate to the US Congress their support for space funding. But we also do this in Canada, mostly like me. I'm one of the only Canadian people on staff at the Planetary Society, so I'm kind of our main conduit to the Canadian government. But everything we do is really all about empowering people, giving people a place in space. And most of the people that are our members and who participate in our advocacy campaigns, they're people who don't work in the space sector, but they have a passion for space and they really believe in it. And so they want to do something and have some kind of role. So we provide opportunities for people to have a role in space. So as I mentioned, we do these advocacy campaigns. We also crowdfund space technologies. So I know earlier today you had a session on solar sails. So that's one area that we're particularly interested in. So we crowdfunded a project called LightSail and a follow-up LightSail 2, which are solar sail spacecraft based in like CubeSat spacecraft body with a massive solar sail. So projects like that, we give people opportunities to directly contribute financially to developing new space technologies. But then we also give people tools to share their love of space in their communities, and then also to communicate directly with government their support for space. So that's kind of who we are in a nutshell. I've been with the Planetary Society for about 7 years now, and most of what I do is communications work. So, writing for our website, engaging with our members and our social media audiences and that kind of thing, just to kind of get people excited about the things that we're excited about, like the recent Perseverance landing, for example, as I'm sure most, if not all of you, tuned into that landing and the drama and the excitement. So we try to get people rallied up when there's a moment like that and channel that excitement into political action. So with that kind of background established, I want to talk to you about why advocacy is something that you should care about and participate in, and why ways that you can do this regardless of what career path you wind up on. So I'll pull up my notes. So yeah, advocacy broadly means showing support for something. So most of the time when we talk about advocacy, we think about it in terms of talking to government, so advocating to government for something. But there are a bunch of different ways that a person can advocate. And you can also advocate for space in a bunch of different ways, because as you all know, space isn't just one thing, one single activity or one single discipline. There are lots of different facets of what the space sector entails. So, you know, there's planetary science, there's human space flight, there's radio astronomy, there's space tourism, asteroid mining. I mean, you name it, there's some way that it engages in the space community. So what you want to advocate for will really depend on what your interests are. I'm mostly going to be speaking from the perspective of space science and space exploration, so encompassing human space flight, but not like space tourism so much as like sending astronauts to the moon or to Mars for more sort of scientific purposes. And I'm talking from that perspective because that's the focus that the Planetary Society takes, but it's also, it aligns with my own personal interests. I'm a big space science nut. But you know, take what I'm saying today and apply it to whatever type of space you're interested in. So yeah, I'll start by talking about political advocacy. So when you advocate to the government in support of space, what you're doing is you're conveying to them why you think it's important to invest in space. And the government is the main target of advocacy because government funding underlies almost every single thing that we do in space. I know that private industry is increasingly active, and there is going to be a bigger role as new markets emerge in space. But still, fundamentally, the governments of the world are the ones that are driving most of the exploration and development of space. So communicating to government that's doing things in space, whether it's, again, like radio astronomy or sending astronauts to Mars or whatever, it's super important to do that because government funding ultimately reflects priorities of the public. So every dollar that the government spends comes to it from taxpayers. So the government is supposed to spend money on things that will benefit the taxpayers. And so a lot of the time, you know, these are pretty obvious things like paving the roads and paying for healthcare. Like those are obviously things that the public needs the government to spend money on. But there are some other things that the government spends money on that are in the interest of the public, but aren't as immediate and pressing and aren't as obvious. So space is one of those things where investing in space science or investing in satellites that monitor climate or communications satellites, like anything that we're doing in space that the government pays for, they're doing it because it's for the benefit of the public. But sometimes it's like a little bit more abstract. So something like planetary science, if the government invests money in studying the ring structures of Saturn, say, like that is building the, you know, humanity's understanding of the cosmos, systems like that form planets that can reflect back on our understanding of Earth. I mean, all of this is stuff that's for the betterment of society, of humanity, but understanding the rings of Saturn isn't as pressing and obvious a public need as something like, you know, clearing the snow from the streets in a snowstorm. So things like this that happen in space that are less obvious, they can get overlooked or underfunded by the government. And we see this in Canada. I'm sure many of you are aware that the Canadian space industry isn't as thriving as it could be. I know a lot of students who are interested in working in the space sector are anxious about whether they'll find careers in Canada because we just don't have as booming a space sector as like the United States, for example. So this I think happens because for the Canadian government, it's not super obvious to them that Canadians want us to be spending money in space and believe that this is something that's worth investing in. So we, as the space community, we understand the value of this. We understand why it's important, to make these incredible discoveries about the cosmos, but also to invest in the industry and the jobs that go about making these discoveries or providing critical infrastructures in space and all of that stuff. So part of our job really is to make the government understand what we understand, which is that investing in space is not only worthwhile and has good returns on investment in terms of creating jobs and all that, but also that it's important to pursue these things. So again, as somebody who's passionate about space science, I deeply believe in the value of investing in those processes of exploration and science that yield discoveries that show us something bigger than ourselves, something about the universe that we live in. I think that that's important for all kinds of reasons, not just for the technological spin-offs or the job creation, but just for the human endeavor to understand who we are and where we come from and what else is out there. So whatever your personal take on the importance of investing in space might be, whether you're really focused on, the industry, the jobs, the economy, those kind of dollars and cents, or if you're, interested in the poetry of discovery, you can communicate that to your government representatives and ask them to make investments in space. And ultimately, when no citizens speak up and when people in the space sector don't speak up, the government has a lot more leeway to cut budgets, cancel programs, and if they're not getting public backlash for doing that, then there's no problem for them because politically, it looks good to cut budgets. It looks good to make things cheaper, and especially anytime a new government comes into power, one of the most popular things to do is say, "Oh, all the things that the last government did were bad, and we're going to cancel them. We're going to shut this down, and we're going to be more efficient." So speaking up for these investments is really important. So how do you do this? In Canada, a lot of the decisions that get made about what our government invests in space happen kind of behind closed doors. It's not a very open and transparent process, but the government does provide opportunities for citizens to voice their opinions. So every year, the government opens up a public consultation process before they decide on the federal budget. This happens at different times every year, but generally there's a period of a month or so where members of the public and stakeholders, like, I'll explain that in a second. So members of the public or stakeholders can submit their recommendations for the priorities that they think the government should take, the investments they think the government should make, and any particular decisions that they think are important. So like if there's some opportunity coming up for say, for example, the Canadian government to sign on as a partner to a big international mission, that's a great opportunity for people to speak up and say, we really want to make sure that Canada does take part in this, that Canada does make these investments. So the ways that you can do this are as an individual, or as I mentioned, there are like stakeholders can make contributions. And so when we talk about stakeholders, it's usually groups like associations. So the Canadian Aerospace Industry, the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada is one of these examples of a stakeholder group. So this is a group that represents the Canadian space industry writ large. There are a number of these groups in the Canadian space industry. SEDS is a great example of this as well. So I think that SEDS has in the past produced statements to submit to this pre-budget consultation process that represent the opinions and the values of the broader membership of the organization. And the Planetary Society does this as well. So we will submit a letter saying, you know, we think that the Canadian government should invest more in, you know, this particular endeavor like planetary science. A good example of this in recent years was when the decision was kind of up in the air of whether Canada would sign on as a partner in the Lunar Gateway project that NASA was leading. And this was an opportunity for Canada to either really continue and advance our space exploration program, or back off and let it basically fall apart. And this was a time when a lot of Canadians spoke up, both through industry associations, but also just members of the public, letting government know that it's important to us as Canadians who believe in space exploration. It's important to us that Canada make this commitment, contribute to this international mission, and sustain our human spaceflight program, but also sustain a lot of our scientists and researchers and the businesses that make up the space industry. So I would encourage you to do a little bit of personal research into the pre-budget consultation process that happens every year. I don't have enough time today to go too much more into depth into that, because I want to talk about a couple other things as well. But that's something that you can do as a citizen when the government is literally asking you, what do you think? What do you think we should invest in? What do you think we should do? Right now, there also happens to be a call for input from the Canadian government, specifically asking people in the space sector what they think the priorities should be for Canada in space moving forward. So this, normally the pre-budget consultation process is for the entire federal budget. So it's very broad and they get a lot of input. Any advocacy organization, whether it's environmental or it's supporting some particular industry or anything else, can contribute to that. This particular call to action, this is for the space sector. So this is a very unique opportunity for any of you, all of you, to weigh in with what you think is important for Canada moving forward. And what you say will likely depend on your particular interests. You know, if you're passionate about asteroid mining, you know, write a letter about how you think Canada should be a leader in asteroid mining in the future. If you're passionate about planetary science, like I am, you might want to say that Canada was noticeably absent from having an instrument on the Perseverance rover that just landed. Why is that? That's unacceptable. We should be partners in every single planetary science mission that is led by another country that has opportunities for us to put instruments on board. We should be doing our own independent planetary science missions. We're not pulling our weight in the international planetary science community because there's a lack of government funding. So you could say that, for example. The Planetary Society is putting together a letter to that effect that we are going to send to all of our members, in Canada at least, encouraging them to submit it to this open call for input. And if you're interested in planetary science, I encourage you to sign up to the mailing list of the Planetary Society, which you do at planetary.org/connect, because we will be sharing our draft letter with all of our members and anybody else in Canada who wants it. And the reason I encourage this is that the more people that we have advocating for the same thing, the louder that message will be heard. So if the government puts out this call for input and it gets, you know, a smattering of different perspectives, that's one thing. But if it gets a smattering of different perspectives plus like 1,000 people all saying the same thing, that message is going to be heard more loudly. So I don't know whether SEDS-Canada is planning on submitting something themselves, but that's another way that you could lend your voice to like a louder chorus to advocate to government for a stronger space sector or particular priorities. And again, if you have your own particular personal view and you feel confident expressing that, definitely write a letter. I'll put in the chat the website of the this call for input. Here we go. And I encourage you all to check this out. It's a unique opportunity, frankly, to say something about the space sector and have government actually hear you. Because as much as there are annual opportunities like this general call for before the federal budget, this one is, they're really asking us, what do you want us to do in space? And so I think this is a great opportunity. The call for input is open until the end of March. And if you want to get on board with the Planetary Society's message, which is really focusing on planetary science, space science, sign up to our mailing list at planetary.org/connect. And as soon as we've drafted our letter, we'll be sharing it out through that channel, so you can get on board that way. So yes, that is government advocacy in a nutshell. It's obviously broader and also more nuanced than what I just described, but sort of that's your like 60 seconds / 20 minutes of government advocacy. Now, the other part of advocacy that I want to talk about is the outreach side of it. So a lot of the time people talk about outreach and advocacy like they're two kind of separate things, but from my perspective, they're two sides of the same coin. So because advocacy is kind of founded on this idea that government decisions and government budgets reflect sort of the will and the priorities of the public, you can influence government decisions and like the overall health of the space sector by influencing public understanding and appreciation of and support for space. So it might seem trifling to, make a post on social media about the Perseverance landing or whatever exciting thing is happening in space, but that's actually a really essential thing that all of us should be doing all the time, and that actually has a big impact. So I'm going to guess that most people here, if you've given your weekend to a space conference, you're probably pretty passionate about space. So you're probably already the types of people who are talking with your friends and family and your classmates and writing on social media, participating in these public discussions and celebrating when something really cool happens in space. And you probably also have a basic sort of innate understanding that space is cool and exciting and awesome and beautiful and awe-inspiring and all of those things. And any time that you can share that passion and that interest with other people, you're doing your part to build public support. So if you make a post on Twitter or whatever about how cool this recent landing was, or how excited you are for the Ingenuity helicopter to fly on another planet, like anytime you share that passion and particularly talk about your personal feelings about it, like, not just a rover landed on Mars, but a rover landed on Mars, and this is why I think that's so cool. Anytime you do that, you are creating an opportunity for somebody that you know to have that little switch go off in their head where they go, wait a second, that is cool, or that is impressive, or that's interesting. And like, I think everybody here has had that kind of like light bulb moment for ourselves where suddenly you got hooked and you got interested, and now here you are. So if you can do that for somebody else, you're building that community that eventually will be the ones to show support for investment in space. So it really does seem like it's a small, minor, contribution that you're making when you share your enthusiasm, but it actually does go a long way. And I would especially say that if you ever get chances to talk to anybody younger than yourself, do it, because kids love space. And the sooner that you get somebody interested, the more you're creating a lifelong supporter of space and but whatever facet of space, you want to support. So, I mean, this is why I'm here talking to you guys. Like, I'm all about talking to students. I think it's great anytime I get a chance to talk to university students, or also high school, middle school, elementary, like any age. There's a way that you can kind of get somebody hooked into space. And anytime you do that, you're building a broader support base for the investments that government wind up making. So there's like, I talked about social media as a platform you can use for this, but if you want to get more involved, there are other things you can do that are a little bit more formal. Like, there are a lot of organizations like Let's Talk Science and Actua and Science Rendezvous that do like formal science outreach programs for kids. You can always volunteer with them. You can organize locally, like at your university, if there's already like a space club or an astronomy club or something like that, you can get involved, and that's a great way to do outreach to other students. But then also, whether or not you wind up going into a space career event, down the road, there's always opportunities for you to share your passion with other people. And one of the things I really like to emphasize is that you don't have to be a space expert to share passion and teach other people about why space is so important to you. And at the Planetary Society, we're really all about this, where a lot of our members are not experts, they're just people who are passionate. And I myself, I don't have like a bachelor's in science. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. I'm totally from the art side of things, but I developed a passion for space when I was, maybe 20 years old or so. And even though it felt too late to me to go into the space sciences, for my career, I got so passionate about talking about space, and I sort of wound up making a career out of that. But, even if you don't wind up doing my same kind of career trajectory, you don't have to be an expert to be able to communicate the basics of why space is cool and exciting and worth investing in. So yeah, that's like the basic message I wanted to communicate, is that if you want more things to happen in space, if you care about humans doing things beyond Earth in whatever capacity you're particularly interested in, one of the things that you can do that is going to be impactful regardless of what kind of job you wind up in is to communicate your passion, share with other people the interest that you have, and every year, no matter what, make it known to government that you support investments in space, because that really is going to be what supports a healthier space industry moving forward. And also, it's just fun to talk about space, and everybody likes it. And so it's not like you're advocating for some dry subject that's hard to really understand or hard to get why it's important. Like, you show somebody a picture of Jupiter and they get it. They see that it's cool and it's beautiful. And if you, tell them a few tantalizing mysteries of things we don't know yet about the universe, people want to understand. It's a really accessible field. So it's easy work. So that's my message to you all. Especially, I'm sure you're all feeling really amped up after this 3-day conference where you've really just been immersed in this thing that you're passionate about. So I'd say take that passion and run with it. And yeah, just no matter what career trajectory you wind up having, you always do have a place in space. So yeah, I would love to take any questions that you guys have now. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. That was an amazing. I think I felt like I was on a one-on-one conversation with just you. And I feel like the audience also felt that same way. And we can really connect more about our inner passions in space. So we do have a few questions.
Great.
I'll start with one of the first questions that Roxy had posed. So she's asking, do you think that the Don't Let Go Canada campaign was effective? And do you think it could have been improved? If so, how?
That's a great question. I would say that yes, it was effective in that Canada did sign on to be a partner in the Lunar Gateway program, and we have signed the Artemis Accords now to take part in that NASA program as well. we've, I think, secured pretty strongly that Canada is going to have a role in space exploration for decades to come. I think where the Don't Let Go Canada advocacy program fell short is that it was a pretty narrow focus on this particular piece of the Canadian space program. So the astronaut program is going to continue. Our robotics expertise is going to continue to be drawn upon, and that, you know, those pieces are going to be supported. And the LEAP program, for, you know, is going to make it so it's not just, you know, the big companies that you dominate the Canadian space sector. I mean, I think that there's some good balance there, but what I, again, as a planetary science enthusiast and science head overall, I would love to have seen part of that campaign be about enhancing Canada's role in space science overall. So that's something where I think that it's not as obvious to the government that we should have a role in that. I think the Don't Let Go Canada campaign really focused on, like, we already are doing all this amazing stuff with the International Space Station. We have astronauts flying. We have the Canadarm, you know, proudly with the Canada logo on it. You know, everybody sees this. Like, don't let go of what we already have. And I think that really what it shouldn't have just been Don't Let Go Canada. It should have been Do More Canada, because I think that we could do a lot more, and we should do a lot more. And I think that message is harder to convey than, like, don't give up on something that we've already got that's good. But I think it's important to convey that.
Yeah, okay. I totally agree also. Now that I'm backpedaling, I'm kind of like, wait, doesn't Canada already do stuff? Why are we not letting go? Like, it was a bit, now it's kind of like a full circle, and I think the circle kind of stopped, and I was like, wait, did we let go or did we not?
Because one of the key things there was that if Canada hadn't signed on to contribute major components of the Lunar Gateway, we wouldn't have had anywhere for our astronauts to go. We wouldn't have had flights. So, like, the reason that Canadian astronauts can go to the International Space Station is because we contributed the Canadarm and other contributions to that funding and all that. So we kind of get a trade where we get astronaut flights in exchange for our contributions. And I think that the astronaut program is always going to be the most publicly visible part of the space program, no matter what. I mean, something like what NASA does with programs like Perseverance, that's very publicly visible, and I would love for Canada to do that kind of thing. But right now, the thing that we do that the public is most aware of is our astronauts. And if we lost our astronaut program, that would have been, I think, a really big hit to Canada's, not only our pride in our space program, but even just the visibility of our space program at all. So that would have been a big thing to lose. And I think the government saw that. You know, Trudeau, nobody wants to be the person who shuts down the astronaut program, right? You don't want to be that leader and have that be part of your legacy. But and so that's why I say it's easier to get government on board with not ending something that's good, but getting them to really have this long-term vision for what Canada could be if we were to invest more, particularly in things like science, where there isn't, you know, there isn't the same kind of payoff as, like, asteroid mining is one of those things that a lot of people want Canada to be a leader in, and there's all kinds of economic arguments for that. Science is not the same kind of thing, so it's a bit of a harder sell. But if you get it, you get it. Why it's important. So it's communicating that in ways that might resonate with the government. That's the challenge.
Agreed. And I think we have another, like, this was Roxy's previous question, but I think it really makes sense to answer it because there's still so many Canadians that don't even know that we have a space agency. Yeah. So how do we change this?
Yeah. So on an individual level, just tell people. You know, if you tell 10 people, that's 10 more people that know, right? But also, I think that the Canadian Space Agency is limited by some of the decisions that it has made, and you know, it's I don't know. I don't want to be too critical of the CSA because I'm supportive of them overall, but I think that you know, with some good marketing savvy, we could probably get a little bit more public awareness. I would love to see a new logo design, for example, because, you look at the NASA logo, it's iconic and nothing compares to that, but we could do a lot. But yeah, exactly. You're not wearing a CSA shirt, are you? Because it's not that cool. So we could do better in like branding and communication. But then also, if I had my way, I would have little PSAs on Canadian television, like they used to do. I don't know if this audience will be aware of this, but when I was a kid, and you'd watch TV, any Canadian station, there'd be these little heritage minutes where it would tell some story from Canadian history, and it was just a public service to make Canadians, especially kids, aware of some of the great moments from our history. And if we did that kind of thing, just letting people know about the cool stuff that Canadian Space Agency does, that would be great. But also, moreover, I think that we could be doing cooler stuff. If Canada sent an independent mission to go explore another planet or a moon or an asteroid or the sun, anything, if we had independent missions that you could rally the public around, I think that would do a lot, because, hundreds of thousands of people watched the Perseverance landing live. Like that, there is massive public interest in planetary science and exploration, and I think Canada could do a lot more to make a name for itself and get the public awareness that comes along with that.
Yes, we're really looking forward to the first Canada-led ever mission.
Yeah.
Hopefully it happens in our lifetime.
And so hopefully one of you out there will be working on it, or many of you.
Exactly. And I don't think a lot of people also know that the Canadarm, we're very proud of it. It's actually on the $5 bill.
Yeah.
Canada's $5 bill. So if you have a $5 bill, it's there.
Yeah. I'll tell you, my boss, Bill Nye, he carries in his wallet at all times a Canadian $5 bill, because he's so impressed that Canada is so proud of its space program that we have it on our currency, and he likes to show people this. So Bill's a fan of the $5 bill, but at the same time, I do think that putting the Canadarm and an astronaut on the $5 bill is great. Investing more in space would be better. Yeah. So I would love to see all of those $5 bills go towards the space program.
That's an amazing answer. Okay, so we have another question from Gabriel. He's asking, do you think that the reason why Canadians don't pay as much attention to the Canadian space sector is because the US and Canada are so closely related? And when we see NASA and SpaceX launching all these different things, we think that we have a strong role, or even that we did that?
Honestly, that's not my impression. I don't think that Canadians think that NASA has anything to do with us. Most people that I talk to in Canada don't know that Canada has a space program at all, or maybe they knew when Chris Hadfield was on the ISS and was playing his guitar and stuff. Maybe Canada was what the Canadians were a bit more aware, but I think that Canadians think that space is a thing that NASA does, and NASA is so huge. I mean, NASA's hard to compete with, and I think the proximity between Canada and the US does have something to do with this. Of course, we're just so overshadowed by NASA, and NASA's budget is bigger than all other space agencies combined, right? So they're always going to beat us. They're always going to outshine us, I should say. But again, I think that Canada could be doing more to impress and engage its citizens in terms of raising public awareness of the space program. I think we need to invest more, but that's the conundrum, is to invest more, you need public support. But if the public isn't even aware that you're doing anything, they're not necessarily going to be supportive of extra investments in it. So that's where these advocacy efforts that I'm talking about really come in, is that you've got to make sure that the public understands what's at stake and understands the value of these investments. But I will also say one thing about public perceptions, which is that even in the US, where NASA is such a well-known brand, the logo itself, everybody knows it, everybody knows NASA, but still, I remember when I first got involved in the space sector, I was living and studying in Washington, D.C., and I would talk to people in D.C. who thought that NASA had shut down, because at that time the space shuttle program had just ended. And people thought that that was the end of NASA, and they thought NASA was done. And then I also read a study that was conducted probably like a decade ago, but I'm guessing it would still be pretty true, which was, so this public research organization did a huge number of surveys of Americans, asking them how much of the federal budget they thought went to NASA. And the average answer was people thought about a quarter of the federal budget went to NASA, which is completely wrong. I mean, NASA at that time was getting half of 1%, like 0.5% of the federal budget went to NASA. And people thought that a quarter of the federal budget went to NASA. And when they would ask people as well if they were supportive of these investments, people would say, no, I think we're investing too much in space. What do we need all this for? It must be so expensive. And then when you would tell people that actually it was just 0.5% of the federal budget, and you'd ask them again if they thought that NASA was overfunded, people would say, no, we should be spending much more than that. So public support and public understanding and like awareness are so interconnected. So that's a bit of a meandering answer, but there's a lot to say about it.
No, it makes sense completely. But speaking of kind of public perception and I guess educating the public, there's a question again, and I think some people agree with this question too, is do you think that Canadian elementary and secondary public school curriculums should have more space-related content mandated by the government? Yes,
absolutely. And partly because space is such an interdisciplinary field. So like any type of STEM like field that you want to come from has a space application, right? So you can teach all different kinds of subjects using space. And what's great about that is that space is just naturally interesting. It's way more kind of exciting. Kids love space and dinosaurs, right? Like everybody goes through that phase when they're a kid of liking space and liking dinosaurs. And like if you can hook somebody in with space, that can translate to an interest in science or engineering or whatever, in a way that if you just start with like the sort of dry material itself, it might not be as engaging. So I really believe that, especially for young kids, space is a great way to ignite a passion for science. And again, science, STEM writ large. So yeah, I think it's a missed opportunity to not incorporate space more into subject matter, but also just the way that like STEM fields are taught, I think could be more interdisciplinary. I'm not a huge fan of like separating out like, biology versus chemistry versus physics. I think that there's a lot you could do by like integrating these fields and focusing on problems that draw on all of them. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. And yeah, specifically also, I know some agencies are really strong on their education side, like space agencies, I mean, and some are really lacking. So it's nice to see there's also a difference between education and outreach. So it's nice of them to start like these initiatives.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I know the Canadian Space Agency has had a hard time with its education and outreach and communications budgets getting slashed. So the government has really made it hard for the CSA to advocate for itself and to raise public awareness. And like they did great work, even though they had their budgets really slashed. Like when Chris Hadfield was in orbit, when he was commander of the space station specifically, I should say, there was phenomenal public outreach around that. And that was taking place after the CSA's education and outreach budget had been eliminated. And they were just running all of these activities through their communications department, which is, it's a different thing. Like public education and communications, like communications is like press releases and writing the website, and public education is like working with schools and, and running like, having astronauts go and speak to audiences and that kind of thing. And all of this happened under the roof of the communications department with very little funding. And they still did a really great job of getting the public excited about Hadfield's mission. So if the CSA had more money to do that outreach, again, it would just build that public support that it would then rely on. But it's this catch-22 where without that, you can't get the other. And yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's all the time that we have, Kate, for questions. But if you can describe your experience or give any tips, some final words for our conference attendees, what would it be before I pass it on to Arsalan and Ishan, our conference coordinators?
I'd say my closing advice is that if you're here, it's because you're passionate about space, and that you should hold on to that and pursue that no matter what, no matter what your grades are, no matter what career opportunities open up, no matter where you want to live. Like, I live in Guelph, Ontario. There's not a thriving space sector here, but like I wanted to find a career where I could live where I wanted to live. That was important to me. And so that was part of the reason I didn't wind up going into like the academic side of space science. Whatever your circumstances are, hold on to your passion for space and just do what you can to try to make it part of your life. Because whether you do that by like joining the Planetary Society and like helping participate in these campaigns that we run and that kind of thing, or you wind up being, an engineer for MDA or something, there are so many different ways that you can participate in the space community and really make this part of your life and part of your identity. So yeah, I just encourage you to keep an open mind as well, and remember that there's no single path into the space sector. Like, you can be a space lawyer, or you can be an artist who helps design logos for new spacecraft. Like, there's a million different ways that you can contribute. So just follow your passion, I guess.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kate, again for coming and taking the time out of your day to talk and speak with all of our audience members and students that are, and also young professionals and others who are here today. So thank you very much. And I'll pass it on to Ishan and Arsalan. And those are really inspiring words to end off the conference. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to get to speak to you all. Thanks.
Bye, Kate. Thank you.
Bye.
So we're just going to wait for Ishan to join the stage. Excellent. All right, thanks so much, Shamira. I guess we'll take it from here. So just got some slides I want to share with you guys. Just give me 1 second.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
For some reason, my video is not working.
Oh, that's weird. Let me know when you're
try
getting
reconnecting. 1 moment.
Sorry about the technical delay, everyone. I'll keep that hidden so that's a surprise for you all. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for still being here on a Sunday afternoon. I know it's really late, but we just have a few closing remarks that we want to share with you all. And then we'll let you off the hook. And, it's nice to see a bunch of friendly faces in the chat. I've noticed, Michael here. It's always great to see him. And Mandy, thank you so much for all your contributions through this whole conference. It's been really great reading your comments. I'm sure the rest of you as well, but we've been so busy organizing this conference that we haven't had a, time. Oh, hey, okay, great. Sean, you got it working. Awesome. So I guess we'll get into it. Okay, so here we go. So am I presenting right?
Yep, you are.
Okay, awesome.
Good.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I want to thank you all once again for coming to Ascension 2021. We've really had a blast. It's been a really great experience. We've had some amazing speakers, some amazing panel discussions. The competitions have really been inspiring. It's been really great to see all the young talent in Canada, and I'm really excited to see what we're going to be doing in the future. And another thank you to Kate for being our closing keynote. That was a really great presentation. And from the bottom of our hearts, from the whole Ascension team, we want to say thank you. So yeah, just a few things that we want to go over before we close off the conference. First of all, we'd like to make an announcement regarding Y-Space. So these are our 3 teams that won. So congratulations, BioArc, Tridacna, and Port L. We also want to thank the sponsors that made this competition possible. So MDA, SATCAN, and Mosaic by HEC Montreal. So thank you so much. We also want to say that, while this event might be closing, SEDS-Canada is actually a huge organization that sponsors many different types of projects targeted towards the development of the Canadian space sector by helping out young professionals and young students really get a hold of the space industry. So we offer unique projects, research programs, and professional development opportunities. And we help students of all ages. So if you know anyone that has a passion for space, or if you have a passion for space, really feel free to reach out to us, and we'll try to help you as much as we can with the different events and activities that we have going on. So this is actually just an example of the Rgx competition that we have going. I think Shamira mentioned it in our opening remarks, but this is just a team that came together to try and experiment in zero gravity through parabolic flight of this plane. We want to thank our gold sponsor, the University of Toronto Institute for Aerospace Studies. Without your help and the help of our other sponsors, this kind of event wouldn't be possible, and we really appreciate you. We also want to thank our silver sponsors, GHGSat and Supercluster. It's been really great working with you guys, and we really want to thank you as well. With that, I'm just going to pass the slides over to Sean to finish us off.
Perfect. So yeah, on this slide, I just wanted to take a moment to say a big thank you to all of our speakers, advisors, and partners. We've had almost 35 speakers and I guess panelists at the event this year, and it was jam-packed, and we had a lot of information to share, a lot of things to motivate us. As we get through COVID, being able to connect like this and hear stories from each other is very important. So wanted to give a big thank you for all of the people involved for giving us their time, really, and making this possible. On this next slide, I just wanted to once again introduce the SEDS-Canada team. Besides the people you see on your screen here, I wanted to say a big thank you to all the team members who helped put this on, including our volunteers. So this would be Kristen Cote, Luis Burrell, Sukriti Kumar, Patrick Chin, Kwasi Nakansa, Agastya Rana, and Katie Harris. All of you guys made this possible and put in a ton of time this weekend. So big thank you to all of you. And then, of course, we have our core Ascension team. So if all of you want to join us on stage, I hope you're all backstage and ready to come on to here. So we have Shamira joining us. Daniel is in.
We just need to wait for Twinkle.
Need to wait for Twinkle. But yes, a big thank you to all of you. I know I joined SEDS just this, I guess 6 months ago or 5 months ago, so it's totally new to me, and it was incredible working with all of you and putting this on. So there we go. We have another member in. We have Anirudh, who's from India. It's a completely different time zone, so he might be sleeping right now and can't join us on stage, but wanted to recognize him as well. And yeah, I think one of you should grab a screenshot so we have this memory to take care of for ourselves. And that pretty much brings us to a close for the closing remarks. Hopefully everyone remember to do the feedback forms. We've posted it everywhere. We're going to email it. Really want to make the conference better, as best as we can make it for next year. So yeah, your feedback will go a long way. And I think that's it. Am I missing something?
No, I think you did a great job.
Some space DJ music to end up.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks,
It's so
everyone.
great to have you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are.
And we hope to see you next year.
See you next year. Sorry, that was for the SEDS. That was for the SEDS Instagram.
All right, everyone. I'm going to stop broadcasting. Is that okay?
Yep. I think we're
All right.
good to go.
Yep.